So what defines your method in researching the texts that you sell here, and what makes you choose a text rather than another? What's the principle behind it?
I'll start with the principle behind it. The principle behind what we do is, in a way, to bring together the myths and lore of different cultures into one place. And so to this end, we look at, from the Greek and Roman to African to simple folk tales to very, very complex and nuanced Jungian analyses of those folk tales. And we also cross it over to the world of dream and ritual, how people bring myth alive, and how in the practice of ritual and ceremony in their different cultures, they not only keep myth alive, but actually create living myth for another generation, creating it anew, as it were. The time of myth is never the past. The time of myth is always the present. And so the acting out of myth, that's why folk custom is an acting out of myth. Theatre is an acting out of myth. William Golding put it particularly beautiful. What is myth? He says a myth is a truth that can only be told in the form of a story. So stories are immensely important for myth, and myth is the underpinning of religion. It's a story that's a truth. Religion is engaged with the process of finding truth and inner truth. Hopefully not just external truth, but inner truths, and stories are our way of exploring that and finding those out for ourselves. People can't have access to those unless they're in one place. We feel really strongly that having a physical place to explore that is important. That's why we're a physical place, not simply an internet and an ether place.
So what do you have in mind as a potential customer, as someone who might favour this kind of literature?
When we go to buy books and texts for this magical bookshop, there are a couple principles involved. One is it unusual? Is it hard to find? Is it something that you can't get easily? That's one thing we like to buy. The other thing we like to buy is something that maybe is really well known, but we think everybody should know it, find it, have exposure to it. We also are very fond of second-hand books. Virginia Woolf talked about second-hand books as books that are wild books, that are untamed books, books that have had a journey, and they keep circulating, and they go from hand to hand, from household to household. And we like being part of that, that I don't think, books should never end up in the bin. They should find their next owner. They're travelers, and the ideas travel in them, and they're like a message in a bottle, almost. That's what I think of a book is. So most of the books here are second-hand, and we love that. We really, really love that. We hope that we're part of their journey, and the ideas travel in them.
This seems to me basically eliminating a dichotomy between what's often defined as high culture and low culture, in as much as every product of human culture is worth to be studied or approached by analysis.
Yeah, certainly one of the things that we love about dissolving the distinction between high culture and low culture is putting the human experience right in the front. A depth of human experience is not the same thing as access to education. One isn't dependent on the other. And so wherever people are looking with integrity and sincerity and depth through their own culture, through their own experimentation, that for us gives an equal weight. I think where we do have some discrimination. Obviously we make choices about what we choose to buy and what we don't choose to buy. What we tend to stay away from is when things are made into a commodity to sell. The marketization of traditions, something that we see a little bit in the New Age, certainly, turning, let's say, the oppressed people of Mongolia, their spiritual tradition is shamanism, and, we certainly want to speak up for those people and their traditions and what it means to them and what we can learn from them. But I think sometimes where we see books produced by people marketing it and selling it as an expensive product, as an act of colonial aggression, those are kind of the materials we perhaps choose not to buy and to put forward here.
It seems that sometimes there is a reverse marketing strategy. You're not figuring out what people want, but you are seemingly gathering people together through what they're interested in. There's an interesting observation by Jenkins, who in some of his audience research studies was proposing that often consumers of a certain niche genre are also producers in a way, let's say writers of a certain genre. Do you find this is something that might occur in your experience?
Okay, as to the question of whether niche readers and niche consumers are also writers, I don't find that to be entirely true. Certainly not here anyway. Most of the people who do buy these books are people who have a personal practice and a personal spiritual interest, but they're not necessarily people who are then turning around and writing books about it. I wonder, in a way, if some of those observations came out of the New Age movement, where in a very self-consciously, self-promoting way, a movement can be studied with the intention of becoming an expert writer on it and selling a best-selling paperback on it. That isn't really the people who are attracted to us here. I think, you know, one of the things we have as a culture here is a tremendous respect for what you can't know quickly. So if you can't know something quickly, then 2 or 3 books are going to give you an appreciation, but they're not going to make you able to write a book that has any kind of depth or validity to it. And I think the kind of people who like us and like this place are the kind of people who appreciate that.
Okay. Religion, myth, folklore, they all seem to have communal narrative themes, often focusing on the supernatural, the magic, the extraordinary. We now live in a very fast-paced society in which we don't seem to have enough time for an irrational side of the human mind to develop. Do you think this kind of literature might have an escapist role? Say, a role used to escape from an oppressive and too rational social order?
I think I look at it slightly differently from the idea that in a very fast-paced society, there isn't really time to look at the mysterious, and one can get very caught up in it, and the call to the mysterious can be a bit escapist. I almost think that would be more of a problem in a highly conformist society, and our society now isn't highly conformist. It's highly individualized and highly almost alienating to the extent that it's so individualized. We don't all dress the same. We're not all expected to have the same kind of relationships. In today's society, there's so much focus on the individual and individual expression and finding your individual style and finding your individual truth and finding your perfect partner. The focus is so much on the self that I almost see what people are doing now as an increased appreciation of what you can't know. There's so much that you can't really escape into the mysterious because you can never dominate it. It's always that one step beyond. It's like your dreams. They'll always mystify you. So when people are looking at the mysterious, which they've always done, there's a tendency sometimes to think, oh, there's a big revival. Now people are appreciating it. But every generation has said that. You know, the circle around Jung felt that they were on the brink of a new age. The circle in the 1880s, when they were discovering spiritualism, they thought that they were doing that for the first time. In the life and circle around Cosimo de' Medici's palazzos with Giordano Bruno and Marsilio Ficino, they thought they were discovering the spiritual for the first time. So it is a perennial. It is a perennial. And every generation is looking at the mysterious. People within it are. I don't think it's a function of society going fast. I think it's a function of the inner human experience looking for it. We do live in strange times, but we're highly irrational all the time. It's very irrational to think that if you buy 2 tons of red metal that you're going to be more virile. However, that's the premise of advertising on cars, and it's highly irrational, but it works all the time, continually, again and again and again. Very strange to think that half an ounce of oil is going to make you a more beautiful woman, but that's the premise of cosmetics advertising, and we know it's irrational, but we fall for it over and over and over again. It's a daily superstition. We're deeply irrational people. The kind of irrational investigation that I think is less irrational is to say, my gosh, it's so strange to be alive. There's so much I can't sense. What's something deeper? What's something stiller? What's something more eternal? What's something that haunts me? That's a kind of superstition I, in a way, have more respect for, ironically.
Yeah, it's interesting how like it like makes you think about how rationality, the idea itself of rationality is something contextual.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
It's not just